Hello, welcome to the 2024 Fall Book Buzz from Denver Public Library. My name is Dodie. I'm a librarian at the Central Library, and I'm delighted to be able to present a plethora of titles for you to look forward to read this fall and into early winter. Just a reminder, the Central Library opens up to the public on November 3rd. You'll be able to see our beautiful study rooms, our new teen space, our children's space, and our newly furnished Schlesman Hall. Please drop by on November 3rd. Details at the link below. The first book I'll be talking about today is Kent State, An American Tragedy by Brian Vandermark. It's been almost a half a century since the Ohio National Guard opened fire on college students, and as an 11-year-old at the time, it was a horrible experience for me to see our own soldiers shooting on our own students. Brian Vandermark wraps up this 1970 tragedy, reflecting on the politics and divisions of today and how they were forming even back that long ago. In less than 13 seconds, 30 guardsmen fired 67 shots at protesters in this event where the Vietnam War came home and the 60s came to an end. Vandermark relies on a host of new material, including interviews with some of the guardsmen, to reconstruct the protest on campus and the shooting. He also recounts the investigations and legal fights that ensued following the shooting. Next up is A Good Indian Girl by Mansi Shah. This is about Jyoti Shah, an Indian American divorcee, spending her summer in Italy after her husband of more than 15 years left her for being unable to conceive. As an Indian American, this is a source of great embarrassment for herself and her family, and she does not know how to reclaim her own joy. When she goes to visit her best friend in Tuscany, she rekindles her passion for cooking and tries to figure out how to best live her life. This heartfelt novel will have you wanting to move to Italy, don't we all, and learn to cook Gujarati food at the same time. This is a celebration of food, friendship, and living an authentic life. She-Wolves, The Untold History of Women on Wall Street is by Paulina Bren and is a fascinating behind-the-scenes deep dive into the collision of women, finance, and New York. First came the secretaries who struggled to get past the typing pool, but by the 1980s, women were playing for high stakes in Wall Street's bad boy culture by day and clubbing by night. Paulina Bren tells us the inside story of how women infiltrated Wall Street from the swinging 60s, a time when no ladies signs hung across the door of its lunch clubs, inside the brokerage houses and investment banks, up to 9/11. The She-Wolves took over Wall Street with subtlety and finesse, navigating a bawdy subculture where unapologetic sexism and racism were the norm. This is as engaging as it is enraging. The She-Wolves, The Untold History of the Women on Wall Street. Next up is We Need No Wings by Anne de Villa Cardinal. This tells the story of Terry Sanchez, a 60-year-old professor, mother, and wife who is struck with great grief when her husband unexpectedly passes away. She really can't dig herself out of the hole until one day, mysteriously, she starts levitating. She thinks it's just an anomaly, or maybe she's losing her mind, but she decides to go back and discover her family's connection to St. Teresa of Avila. But instead of finding answers, she finds more questions. The author creates a beautiful, immersive setting. All of us will be booking a trip to Spain, and you will be transported with the descriptions of the stone walls, fragrant gardens, and monasteries and churches. And you'll also be rooting for Terry all the way to help her find her roots. Enjoy. Next book is by Jamie Quattro. It's Two-Step Devil. I can honestly say this book is weird and wonderful fun. It's told from the perspective of three narrators. Prophet, a 70-year-old painter living off the grid in a cabin near the Georgia border. Michael, a teenage girl who he believes is a messenger from God, who he's rescued from what he thinks is an attempted kidnapping. And the third voice is the devil himself. The prophet forms a plan to send Michael to the White House to share his message regarding the moral state of the nation. And it's dead serious, yet funny, and quite relevant in this election month, or I should say 2 weeks. This is a philosophical examination of fate and faith and dares to ask what salvation, if any, can be found in a modern world. Next up is a graphic novel from Benoît Simat and illustrated by Stéphane Douay. It is the incredible story of cooking from prehistory to today, 500,000 years of adventure. This is a nonfiction historical graphic novel that spans the development of cooking from the prehistoric era to the modern day and answers all kinds of questions that you might have lurking, like who invented beer? Who invented bread? Who invented steam cooking and freezing? Whoever thought that gastronomy and tableware will become symbols of political power? All is revealed in this beautiful, illustrated walk through the incredible story of cooking. There's even 22 recipes included. The next book is The Second 50, Answers to the Big Questions of Midlife and Beyond. Deborah Whitman, who is the Chief Policy Officer and former staff director for the Senate National Committee on Aging and is from AARP, makes a compelling case that we must care for ourselves, increase our healthy habits, and recognize that we don't age alone. This asks all the important questions. How long will I live? Will I be healthy? Will I have enough money? How will I die? We must muster our collective will and care about each other as we age together. Included are extensive notes which encourage further reading on all the topics covered. This next title is a young adult novel, and I felt compelled to put it on here because I think it has messages for all of us in it. Addie in Love is by Tim Lockett. He's a teacher whose last book, Tell It True, won the Whippoorwill Book Award, which honors books that dispel stereotypes about young people in rural areas in small towns. He hits the mark in Addie in Love by introducing readers to Atticus T. Peel, Addie for short, who is 13 and an animal advocate. She's also a vegetarian atheist in the deep heart of the South, where ribs and guns and church are a way of life. She spends a lot of her time designing plans for a no-kill shelter, doing schoolwork, hanging out with her best friend Reagan, and battling the blues. But when Addie meets a mysterious boy at the county fair, her world begins to crumble. This boy, with his wild hair and rough hands, works with captive animals. Addie is forced to choose between her own values and the boy that she's fallen for. This book is about the tough choices that arise when two principled people disagree, and is also a story about what it means to, as Addie likes to say, contain multitudes, to love both men and women, to defend your mixed-race family in the American South, to care for someone who experiences the world in fundamentally different ways than you do. Pick this one up or recommend it to a teen you know. Still Life by Catherine Packard Burke is the story of trans woman Edith trying to unify her lives before and after, the years pre and post-transition. Her pre-transition life is filled with friendships, romances, and formative moments, but how does one honor what was intentionally left behind? Everything in Edith's life is approaching disaster. Her writing career is stagnant, her love life is a mess, her ex, Tessa, is marrying a man, and her best friend, Val, is dead. When Edith decides to leave behind the East Coast for graduate school, she begins a year-long journey away from the person she loves most and toward a hazy new understanding of whom she will become. This novel doesn't offer easy resolutions, but instead immerses readers in the visceral reality of its characters. I'm not a big poetry reader, but I have to tell you, Lindsay Rush's A Bit Too Much really got me into it. A Bit Too Much is a debut poetry collection. It's humorous and joyful, full of big feelings, tender truths, hard-won wisdom, and lots of laughs. Lindsay Rush didn't know that she liked poetry until she started writing it. Then she embarked on an internet experiment under the Instagram username at Mary Oliver's Drunk Cousin that turned into a body of work that struck a chord with women all across the country. And before you knew it, Lindsay was a poet. With titles like Sheedanism, Someone to Eat Chips With, It's Called Maximalism Babe, and Breaking News, Local Woman Gets Out of Bed, Rush's debut collection of poetry uses humor to grapple with the female experience, from questioning whether or not to have children, to roasting the patriarchy, to challenging what it means to age gracefully. Readers will walk away with Lindsay's work feeling seen, celebrated, and wholly convinced that joy is an urgent, worthwhile pursuit. Something Not Nothing is a story of grief and love from Sarah Levitt. In April 2020, cartoonist Sarah Levitt's partner of 22 years, Dodie, died with medical assistance after years of severe chronic pain and a rapid decline at the end of her life. Sarah's grief was deep. She was unable to create, illustrate, draw, or even think. And then one day, small sketches started to come back to her. Soon, these little jiggles, wiggles, and doodles became a form of therapy for Sarah, and she was starting to be able to let go of some of her grief. The result is this extraordinary book that delicately articulates the vagaries of grief and the sweet remembrances of enduring love. Moving and impressionistic, Something Not Nothing shows that alongside grief, there is room for peace, joy, and new beginnings. This next book can be simply described as a story of girl meets printer. Hard Copy by Fionn Veldman tells the story of a customer service assistant who spends long hours in front of the office copier without friends, alone, and with nobody to talk to, until she finds that the copier is actually a very fine companion. She shares her fears, her past, her hopes, and her dreams with the office copier. It seems like a beautiful friendship, but then her boss seems to think that she's losing her mind and she's put on leave. Separated from her friend, she's forced to confront what really matters in life and faces her fears head on. But she's not about to give up on her only friend without a fight, and it turns out neither is the copier. This is a workplace novel in the realm of Bunny by Mona Awad, Big Swiss by Jen Began, and is part of what is now being called weird girl fiction. Pick it up, have a laugh, and discover how isolationism and loneliness can affect all of us. Why let sweets have all the fun? Jessie Sheehan's newest book, Salty, Cheesy, Herby, Crispy, Snackable Bakes, 100 Easy Peasy Savory Recipes for 24/7 Deliciousness, is exactly what to open when you want to bake but don't know what to bake. From cover to cover, you will be captivated with an extensive range of flavors, all presented in Jessie Sheehan's lovely, friendly, you-can-do-it style. It's dedicated to easy treats that can be whipped up in record time. Divided into chapters such as the sliceables, toasty handhelds, and breads you need but don't need, her book offers a delicious assortment of recipes for everything from baby ham and cheese croissants and baked spaghetti pie to a basil peach mascarpone galette. An invaluable, essential savory hack section brilliantly wraps things up, and everything is generously seasoned with Sheehan's delightfully exuberant wit. Personally, I love the crumbly Gouda Bites and the cocktail hour loaf I made from this cookbook because I love olives. Next title is I'm Sorry for My Loss from co-authors Rebecca Little and Colleen Long. These friends discovered that they had both experienced pregnancy losses past 20 weeks, and were desperately searching for information to help them process what they had been through, but found nothing. The result is this comprehensive sociological look at the laws, pop culture, medicine, and history surrounding female grief and pregnancy loss, how it came to be so stigmatized, and what a system of more compassionate care could look like. As journalists and authors, these two friends felt that this book was what was needed to display the major fault lines in a maternal reproductive care system which is in dire need of radical transformation. Here's a graphic novel for everyone that delights in things British and in Alan Moore. This is the debut, The Great When is the debut of a new urban fantasy series from Moore called The Long London Quintet. It's set in 1949 London, and it follows 18-year-old Dennis Knuckleyard, who, orphaned during the war, works and resides in a bookshop owned by a peculiar woman named Coffin Ada. One day he stumbles upon a strange book, A London Walk, by Reverend Thomas Hampole, and it seems to reveal that there is another London lying right beyond the London that Dennis is in. He embarks on a journey into this unfamiliar world filled with surprises beyond his wildest imagination. The other London has an occult underbelly and eccentric cast of characters, including sorcerers, gangsters, and murderers. When somebody knows what Dennis knows, everybody wants to find him. This is mystical, hilarious, and magnificently imagined. This conscious, altering world of Long London is exactly what your fantasy world has been looking for. Overshoot, How the World Surrendered to the Climate Crisis, comes to us from Wim Carton and Andreas Malm. It reframes climate change as a byproduct of overshoot, which is basically that we continue to use more energy than we generate. And until we stop that, we cannot turn back climate change. We are essentially expending more energy than we can produce, and energy businesses then dictate this overconsumption for sheer profit. Society is due for a correction. Did you know that there is actually a climate overshoot commission? Look it up on Google and read Overshoot and see what you can do to stop your energy consumption. The Paranormal Ranger by Stanley Milford Jr. is a unique look at law enforcement on the Navajo Reservation that runs from Arizona through New Mexico and Utah to Colorado. He was a member of law enforcement in the Navajo Reservation, and towards the end of his career, he was assigned to a special project unit. Rather than looking at cattle inspections and domestic disputes, he was now investigating paranormal activities in the nation. Milford recounts all the stories from the logical, factual, and serious perspective of a law enforcement officer, and rolls in the beliefs and customs and culture of Native Americans and how those collide and interweave with the paranormal world. This provides a chilling, realistic perspective on what logic dictates should not be possible. This Cursed House is a debut from Del Sandine and is best described as Southern Gothic. In 1962, 27-year-old Gemma Barker wants to escape her life in Chicago, and when she gets a job offer from the Duchon family in New Orleans, she accepts it, believing that she'll simply be a tutor, a housemate, and a caretaker with the family. But as she starts work at the mansion, she discovers that the Duchon family isn't what it seems. Light enough to pass as white, the black family members look down on brown-skinned Gemma, and they all hold court to the eccentric clan's haughty grandmother, Honorine. As soon as they can get the power to break a curse, they will, and that is what it appears Gemma is there for. The real horror in this book, though, is the lasting effects of slavery and racism and how they created generational trauma. The 1979 Greensboro Massacre is often referred to as the time when the alt-right was formed. On November 3rd, 1979, the Workers' Viewpoint Organization had assembled people for a march protesting the Ku Klux Klan. What became known as the Greensboro Massacre, happened in a short time. Within 88 minutes, more than 30 Klansmen rolled up to the protesters and opened fire, leaving 5, what they called communists, dead. When the shooters were acquitted in court, Reverend Johnson, one of his organizers, found inspiration in Nelson Mandela's Post-Apartheid Truth and Reconciliation Committee and insisted that the city face up to its hardest truths and start to heal by accepting that the massacre happened, the Morningside Massacre had happened. The persistent mysteries of this case touch deep on cultural insecurities and the contradictions about race and class. A quintessentially American story, Morningside, the 1979 Greensboro Massacre, and the Struggle for an American City's Soul by Aaron Shatterly, explores the courage required to make change and the evolving pursuit of a more inclusive and equal future. For some, The Ancients by John Larison may evoke the sense of a medieval society, though this is definitely a post-apocalyptic novel. It's set in unspecified locations, though one might imagine Alaska at one end and Southern California at the other, and it begins with the children of a hunting clan who have been abandoned. Their mother has been kidnapped and taken down the coast. The children decide that they must find their mother. Along the way, they run into Cyrus, a master in his own failing city, who must increase his wool tribute. He was in love, was a scholar, but the man that he loved has now been married, and now his mother is pressuring him to find someone to marry himself. He decides to get on board with the children and find a better place. There is a massive ark the emperor is building, but only people with money and privilege are able to board, which definitely leads out the children, most likely Cyrus as well. Fables are interwoven throughout the story until this novel itself becomes something of a cautionary tale, emphasizing how to learn from the past in order to create a better world for the future. Tom Ryan gives us a delightful new mystery in The Treasure Hunters Club. He skillfully weaves together the perspectives of 3 very special people. 40-year-old Peter with no job. Well, he had a call center gig, but that was not so great. He shares an apartment with 30-something-year-old failed, yet still trying to write, Cass, and self-proclaimed teenage detective Dandy, who is a sort of Gen Z Nancy Drew. They're all in the town of Maple Bay, which biggest tourist attraction is a lost pirate treasure which nobody has ever been able to find. The locals know that there's more than just gold buried in that sand, though. As the paths of these 3 no longer strangers converge, the truth is about to be blown wide open, but not before the bodies start to pile up. From a surprise inheritance to a hidden pirate treasure, the Treasure Hunters Club turns a quaint coastal mystery into an unexpectedly thrilling ride, proof that sometimes the real treasure is the story itself. Evan Rail brings us the story of Absinthe in The Absinthe Forger, a true story of deception, betrayal, and the world's most dangerous spirit. Often called the Green Fairy, Rail chronicles how, after various European countries banned absinthe, an allegedly a hallucinogenic liquor, in the 20th century, a black market arose for existing bottles. Absinthe alone, just saying it, conjures images of tortured artists and vacant-eyed addicts driven to despicable crimes. Though many people think the drink started in France, it actually started in Switzerland, but use of wormwood to create beverages dates all the way back to ancient Egypt. For those interested in true crime, history, and the world of spirits, this book offers a unique and engrossing story that not only uncovers the truth behind a major scandal, but also celebrates the enduring allure of absinthe. If you like The Feather Thief, you'll like The Absinthe Forger. Food and nature writer Eugenia Bone begins Have a Good Trip, exploring the magic mushroom experience with a disclaimer saying that it should not be construed as advocacy for the use of any illegal substance. Well, in Colorado in 2025, the use of psilocybin will be legalized, so we don't have to adhere to that warning. Although public attitudes towards mushroom and their active ingredient have recently become more liberal, there has not been much scientific inquiry. Eugenia Bone provides advice on how to induce enjoyable trips and avoid bad ones, examining hallucinations, trance states, and ego dissolution. There has been some success in treating PTSD and related mental health issues with psilocybin, but research is still sketchy. Bone believes that, quote, the magic in magic mushrooms is their potential to put you in tune with your true self. The elegant blend of scientific research, stories of individual mushroom users, and Bone's own experience with the drug make for a study that's as eclectic as it is stimulating. In The Name of This Band is REM by Peter Ames Carlin, one of the genre's most thorough and insightful music biographers, recognizes the complexity of the REM story and honors it at every level, personal, music, and cultural. Longtime fans will love the deep dissections of the band's music process and the way Carlin weaves her story through the bigger tale of indie culture and politics in the 1980s and beyond. With smash records like Out of Time, Automatic for the People, and Green, listeners embrace the raw, outrageous, and expressive Michael Stipe and REM's distinctive musical flair. For those who ask why they broke up, they actually didn't break up. They all really just got tired of the music business. They are solidified as the generational spokesman for the 80s, and Carlin's kinetic prose elevates this perceptive portrait of one of America's most vital bands. All little girls love ponies, but little girls grow up and ponies do not. Christina Lynch's Pony Confidential is a delight and will remind you of every pony you ever knew or loved, or the one that you wanted and you never got. Pony has been passed from one owner to another for longer than he can remember. He fondly remembers his favorite owner, Penny, the little girl he was just separated from, who he was recently separated from. Those memories are old now, and Penny is living an ordinary life when there is a knock on her door, and she is then put in handcuffs, accused of murder, and whisked back to the place where she grew up. Hearing of Penny's fate, Pony knows that Penny is no murderer. So as smart and as devious as he is cute, the pony uses his hard-won knowledge of human weakness and cruelty to try to clear Penny's name and find the real killer. Pony is grumpy wonderful, and his emotional trauma is a perfect excuse for such pony-esque behavior as stepping on partygoers' toes and bucking randomly at horse shows. When Pony takes to the road, it's madcap and perhaps even plausible, guaranteed to gallop away with your heart. The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Long is also a feel-good tale. It has everything you want: an endearing found family, whimsical fortune-telling magic, a brooding cat, and mouth-watering pastries that may mysteriously add inches to your waistline. Tao is an immigrant fortune teller traveling between villages with just her trusty mule for company. She only tells small fortunes. She knows from bitter experience that big fortunes come with big consequences. Even if it's a lonely life, it's better than the one she left behind. But a small fortune unexpectedly becomes something more when a semi-reformed thief and an ex-mercenary recruit her in their desperate search for a lost child. Soon they're joined by a baker and a magical feline. Besides being charming, it is most importantly a narrative that resonates with those who are stuck in any part of diaspora. Tao's journey captures that experience perfectly, being stuck between two worlds but belonging in none. Here's a holiday book for you. I always had to put one on the fall list. Brightly Shining by Ingvild Roisha is told from the point of view of 10-year-old Ranja as she tries to survive with an alcoholic father, the loss of her mother, and only her 16-year-old disillusioned sister Melissa to turn to. They live in Oslo, and it's getting close to Christmas. Their father seems to always be unemployed, and one day he shows up with a job working at the Christmas tree stand. He ends up, though, spending most of his time at the bar, and that's where all the money goes. When the girls decide to take his job selling holiday trees and wreaths, something magical happens. The society around them, that at first seemed to want to separate them from their father, seems to gather around them and want to support them. There are many scenes that are strong that will resonate with readers, such as the Lucia celebration, which shows that there are people around the girls who care about them and want them to survive and thrive. Our last book on the list today is What the Wife Knew by Darby Kane. This is a very twisty thriller. It says it right on the cover. Who murdered the husband she planned to kill? When Addison marries Dr. Richmond Dodie, she knows she's the third wife, and she already has plans. But mysteriously, he dies before she has a chance to do it. Now law enforcement are circling in on her, and everybody in town is becoming increasingly hostile, including his first two wives, his college sweetheart, wife number 1, and wife number 2. She wanted to marry him to ruin him, but now somebody else has done it for her. But she's not done with him yet. It's interesting that Darby Kane also writes under the name of Helen K. Demon, and in that she writes charming women's fiction. So this is her dark thriller side, and the other side is her romantic women's fiction side. That's all I have for you today. Thanks for joining our Fall Book Buzz 2024. We'll be back in January with a Winter of Reading Book Buzz 2024. And be sure to stop by the newly opened Central Library on November 3rd or after. We'll be open Sunday through Thursday with extended hours. See more below or at denverlibrary.org.